It's amazing how they adapt.
Mayor, we are on the air.
He's our second tripod we've had. Yeah.
All right, we are on the air, so we're going to get started. Just a reminder, all these mics are always hot, so side conversations that Tammy and David are having are going to get picked up by the microphone. Yes, microphones are always on, so try to avoid side conversations because it's going to make it hard for the public to hear the main conversations going on. We don't have the Q mic system here. We are here today for the second strategic planning session. Today is where we go through the goals and objectives. This is where we further refine the town board's broad outcome areas and strategic policy statements down further to what are we going to do in the proximate future. Those are the goals. And what are we going to do next year? What are the expectations from a capital and initiative standpoint? I do want to highlight that there is a lot of work that goes on that is not on this list. That's the important work of continuing to maintain the system, both of our physical system and our processes. That is a constant pursuit that we have to continue to improve those, maintain the current condition of them, and for our processes, make them better. So there is a lot of base work that happens behind the scenes that is not included on this. We try to limit the objectives on the 1 year to things that are high visibility, things the board is interested in, and things that directly advance those goals and those strategic policy statements. You will also see that there are strategic policy statements and there are goals that do not connect to anything that we're going to do next year. There may be some minor things happening in the background that support those goals, or there may not be. We have a lot of goals, as you see we'll go through, and there isn't any way that we have the capacity to take on an objective for every goal every year. So really the purpose of those goals is to make sure that as we're crafting the strategic plan every year, both the board and staff are evaluating, hey, it's been a few years since we've done anything to incentivize private development of workforce and affordable housing. Maybe we should add something to the next year objectives. With all of that said, the way that this process works from here on out, we will go through what staff has worked through and proposed. We always leave a little bit of space from an initiative standpoint for the board. Certainly all of these things are ultimately board discretion, so if you don't want any of these things to happen, or if you think this is a lesser priority than something that you may have in mind, now is the chance to morph this plan. This plan will feed into May 26th. We'll bring you the provisional strategic plan. That is the document that staff uses to create the 2027 proposed budget. We call that the provisional strategic plan because it is likely to change based on budget realities. We may come back to the board in the fall when we adopt the budget and say we cannot fit this particular objective into the 2027 budget. So this feeds into the provisional strategic plan in May 26th. That will come before the board for consideration, and then that delves into, at the end of the year when we adopt the budget, we do the final strategic plan, which is the document that we track to make sure that your priorities get accomplished. Happy to answer any questions if there are any, otherwise we'll jump right into the first outcome area. Okay, so the first outcome area is exceptional community services. Estes Park is an exceptionally vibrant, diverse, inclusive, and active mountain community in which to live, work, work and play, with housing available for all segments in our community. We do have some proposed changes in the goals this year. We want to add in 1B, continue efforts with the Housing Authority to develop additional housing at the Fish Hatchery property. We have completed Goal 2A and want to replace it with continue engaging with senior community members and partner organizations that support seniors and identify opportunities for the town to help address new and existing matters of importance, including housing and transportation for seniors. 6A, we're morphing a little bit because we anticipate completion of the comprehensive plan update, the development code update. One day I will get past the comprehensive plan. The development code update, so that will be complete, but we do want to continue to ensure that the development code aligns with the new comprehensive plan and other town policies and goals by processing amendments as necessary. And then the last two changes, replacing the current 10A, which is monitoring the fundraising progress of the Fine Arts Guild of the Rockies for the Encore Performing Arts Center. As those of you that were on the board at the end of last year recall, the Fine Arts Guild told us that they were no longer interested in that parcel in Stanley because they had found an alternative pursuit. So there is no executed agreement between the town and the Arts Guild, and we don't have any fundraising to monitor. We are proposing to replace that with exploring the potential to create a program to incentivize art on both public and private property, especially with new development in non-residential areas and or the Estes Arts District. Those are the staff recommendations for the goals. Happy to entertain suggestions or questions from the town board.
I have a question on 1B. Is there a reason we're specifically saying fish hatchery project instead of moving forward on other projects that could be a little faster? Like if we close on the Tiny Town property, that's going to be an easier build, hypothetically, than the fish hatchery project. So why are we specifically saying the fish hatchery project?
Because the fish hatchery project is, the town is the applicant for that. Specifically, it's what we've been given direction on over the last 8 years or so to continue moving forward. And so that's a reason why it specifically calls that fish hatchery.
Yeah, and the housing authority will be the buyer of the property at Tiny Town, but we do own the property on Stanley Avenue, so that was one of my thoughts that, why aren't we mentioning Stanley Avenue property as well?
The reason we haven't mentioned Stanley Avenue is the project that we proposed there was not approved by the town board, and we don't think at this point that there's another project that we would bring forward under the current rules and regulations. So our plan right now is to continue to use that property as we have been, because the rezoning and redevelopment effort there failed.
If the board wants us to continue to explore it, we can certainly explore it.
Happy to.
Yeah, I actually think we should, although, there was a discussion about whether we transfer that to the housing authority, and that's another thing that's kind of, everyone outside the town thinks we run the housing authority, and we don't. And so if there's still that idea that staff had talked about transferring that property to the housing authority, is that something we want to put on here, or is that still kind of just an item of discussion we have?
We could say something like continue exploring options for ... As Town Administrator Mahalik mentioned, we brought it to the town board.
I think that may be a better way to do it, because it is really considering options at this point.
Open in.
Well, maybe, ideally for me, the housing authority is included in that, but maybe it could just be specific to that property and not necessarily exactly who we're working with on developing additional housing there, or what happens at that site.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
How would you phrase that?
This is the highest pressure meeting of the year for me.
Yeah.
To wordsmith on screen live. And to be fair, we had a lengthy conversation about that piece of property, and we had community input on that. And if we articulate specifically in a strategic plan at this level that we want to focus on one property, we may be focusing on that one tree instead of the forest. And I think that at this level, maybe we are incentivizing or prioritizing private investment, involvement, a relationship to develop property versus being an opportunity. And focusing on one piece of property may take away from the housing authority. I wish we could have had a conversation with housing authority sooner than June, but we still have that conversation coming. And I am assuming they're going to come with a big plan and more information for us to make good decisions. But at this level, I would be reluctant to add a specific piece of property. But I agree with a fresh perspective on why are we diving into fish hatchery with such fervor when there may be better opportunities. Housing authority has a lot of land, and I think that's one of the conversations we're going to have in June is what's the priority? What are the priorities? We need to prioritize.
That's fair.
More than we need
You're
to
right,
focus.
because they do have other properties, and maybe Tiny Town goes forward and Fish Hatchery doesn't, and, so who knows?
Well-
Maybe we could consolidate these and just say continue efforts with the housing authority to develop additional workforce housing on town-owned property.
Yes,
And I think it's important to say workforce housing instead of town employee housing, because while that was one of the goals with 179 Stanley, part of that discussion was having it be workforce housing, and maybe there'd be another option specifically for town employees elsewhere.
I like that. That's good.
I agree.
Because that kind of
So
takes
I-
away the specifics.
When we're looking at that 1B, can we integrate something there maybe as an objective to review that or to phase that development instead of doing the entire thing, to look at what the performance is of it? There's some question about what the demand is by the community for housing units. Are we best off going all in on Fish Hatchery, or should we phase that? There's a lot of other property that may be lower hanging fruit, as people say sometimes.
I think we can kind of continue that conversation with the housing authority at our next meeting.
I totally
And I think we've created that flexibility to do that
Yeah, I think you
in
have.
1B.
Fish hatchery has a certain schedule. We'll probably see it in August or September in front of the board. There's still steps that has to go through. I'm not sure I'd call it a fervor. It has been an 8-year project.
And I think it will continue to be, I mean, nothing's gonna be built there in the immediate future. They still are working, and Trustee Brown can speak to it better than me probably at this point, but they're still working out financing options, how they would incorporate low income housing tax credits and the
And that's the
capital
big thing
stack.
too, because basically they can't proceed with their plan unless they get allocated low-income housing tax credits. And they don't expect that to happen the first year they apply.
So it'll come in its good time, and we'll
Yeah.
debate it accordingly. But this leaves it open. Good with that?
Great drafting.
Other items on
I have
this objective?
I'm sorry, I have one other item, and that is on the 2A, and I don't know if this is the place for it, but I kind of feel, okay, calling out senior community members and seniors is fine, but I think we're missing something that we're not calling out, and that is seasonal housing. And I'm not real pleased with the lack of focus I think we've had on the seasonal housing. We kind of leave it to the employers to worry about that. And I think we have a role to play in facilitating seasonal housing for our summer workers.
Well, this community support group that is being put together with the businesses and with those providing housing.
That's kind of the
That's a
start.
significant effort, and they've got a website now, they have a whole series of support efforts throughout the summer and welcoming events. I mean, it's much more robust than anything we've seen before, and it reflects what several other cities already have that they've developed under this program. So that CSG for exchange workers, as they call them,
Yeah, maybe we ought to identify CSG.
And I would just note that there is a 2026 strategic plan item, work with the Chamber and Housing Authority to assess how seasonal employees are housed in Estes Park. There's a survey out right now that'll close in the middle of May, and our plan is to bring that information forward to the town board with some themes that we learned, and I think that would tee up the discussion for what we, in collaboration with the Housing Authority, could do to help address that need.
So to your point, Trustee Brown, because that's an objective and it's not tied directly to a seasonal housing focused goal, we can put a new goal. I put 1C in there, continue efforts with the Housing Authority to address seasonal housing needs. We're in a weird position always when we're doing the strategic plan for next year, because we have we're only at the 1 quarter through the current strategic plan, and as Jason mentioned, we do have a seasonal housing item in that strategic plan that we might by the end of the year have an action to put back into this, and it would help to have a goal to connect it to.
I like the idea of putting a goal in there, because
Yes.
this issue's not going away, and
Right,
it's
it's
something I
not.
think we'll work on iteratively.
The only thing I'd suggest is we add with the Housing Authority and the business community.
right, yeah,
Because
the
they
housing
are
authority
critical.
limits it to,
Right, it's probably gonna be as much with the business community as the housing authority.
I I'd like that addition, and to elaborate a little bit further on the survey that I just mentioned, it's gone out to the chamber membership, and then the town clerk's office just sent it to every licensed business owner in town. So we're gleaning that information directly from the businesses, and the survey asked what they're currently doing, so I think we can learn from some of their experience too.
You know, extra tea on community.
That's why it's so high pressure for Travis.
Yeah, I know. He doesn't have spell check on this.
It's Excel.
I do go back and use spell check at the end. So if you see any typos in here, Deputy Town Clerk Beers has already caught a few.
Well, you weren't hired for your typing skills.
Any other items on the goals? Before we move
I
to
have,
objectives?
on 6, we're talking about development code and standards. Can we include or consider something about cost analysis for development changes? When we're looking at the impact, the cost impact, are we making rules to make rules? Are we considering cost barriers to development? I think it's worthy of our consideration, and it seems that if we include it here, we'll at least think about it.
Do you? I think it's a great suggestion. Do we want it as a goal or maybe an objective to have us build a system?
Yes.
I'm looking at Steve from a capacity standpoint, building in our process, anytime we bring a code change forward, having a cost analysis on that for the end user. Is that something that's feasible next year, or is it something we'd want to put as a goal with maybe an objective that advances it but doesn't complete it next year?
For the end user, the cost for the end user.
Yeah, so I believe what Trustee Eigel is articulating, not trying to, I think
No,
he
I'm
articulated
always
it
trying.
well, is when we make a change to the building code or the development code, it does have cost to the people that have to adhere to that, which ultimately costs everybody that lives in our community money at some level. Whether you're renting a property, whether you're coming to work at a property, that cost of regulation is a real thing. And when we do changes, or when the state requires us to make changes to our codes, there are real consequences to that.
It can be very different for
Well,
different end users.
It's true. Light fixtures for dark sky,
Yeah.
sprinklers in residences. There are some significant impacts of cost that we have to consider when we balance. Is this good for the community? Is it reasonable from the cost to put it in, the cost to maintain it? And I'll bring that up in a little bit. Is we have to look at the whole cost. So I think it's a reasonable part of the conversation. I'm not sure it needs to be part of a checklist, but we do need to talk about it because those are the things the community responds to. How can you set these rules in place? Didn't you think about what that was going to cost us?
Just don't do a blanket acceptance of all the codes. If there's a change that's needed, certainly, but
Depends on the reason and the reason.
sometimes things are implemented that do cost a lot of money to the end users, and what's the gain on that?
But saying full costs doesn't reflect what we just talked about. We talked about end user costs.
But I don't think we should limit to end users. There are costs to us in
Yeah, it costs
implementation,
to us too.
and I don't think we can ignore those either.
Well, and how robust of cost analyses are we gonna do? I'm not sure how many of these we might have in the course of a year.
I think sprinklers are a really good example.
Well, they
Residential
are a
fire
good
sprinklers.
example. Every developer in town would say, yeah, look what
They
it's
would
at.
want to have input,
Yeah.
and it should be part of our conversation. And I don't have a sense that that was a significant enough part of that conversation, but now we are seeing the impacts of it. So I think that on something at that level, we should be talking
I
about it
think that predated us on the board, didn't it? The
Yes.
decision on
by a
sprinklers.
few minutes.
By a few
Well,
minutes.
similar to what
A
the
few
state,
minutes, yeah, that wasn't
it's
much.
similar to what the state does in legislation requiring a fiscal impact statement.
Unless
Now-
they're making the local governments do something.
I
then there's
know,
no
but
fiscal
it should be extend that, but I don't think it should be limited to end users because there's things that impact us in implementation and inspection. And are we gonna have more staff to do this? And what are the fiscal impacts?
Can I clarify, are you asking for this to be something, once the new development code or the updated development code is adopted, that there's a process that additional changes are considered, or I thought I heard you suggest that you want this as part of this current development code process, which I would assume is a discussion that's being, that whatever's gonna come before the board, there's a consideration of that as one of many factors in how those those changes are made. We're not just putting things in because we hear one person say they want them, we're putting them in based on community feedback, best practices, strategic plan initiatives, cost development. And so I guess I'm asking you, Mark, are you asking for a process beyond this development code changes that are made?
However, it's best integrated with decisions that we make for the community. Now, the way the goals are written now, it addresses what's currently happening. So I think that it could be part of what is coming to us. And I think it's reasonable to anticipate with this code rewrite before we approve it, that this is something we're gonna think about, or talk about, or consider as we go. So I think that it's possible to keep it in mind as we finalize this code.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying I think it's inherent that that's part of our consideration when the development code update comes to us for final approval. So I guess I'm clarifying if you believe you're asking for an additional process if after this development code update is complete, that where there's a process that we have that says making sure cost analysis is a component of what comes before us for those kind of changes. Am I making sense?
Kind of. I think that it could be a sentence that says, consider the cost impact to the whole spectrum, whether that's government or end user. And we should include that when we make decisions, but I don't have a sense that we have always formally done that. We before me.
What I'm hearing is it may be a further development of that. Right now, I won't say it's a little used, but it's usually a pretty high level summary in financial impact. It's a more, in the memo format that we have, it may be a more full accounting for any sort of, certainly any code changes that come forward after the development code is done. I think building codes are one that frequently get identified, and there are choices on some of those and there are not choices on others. But the general sentiment that I'm hearing from Trustee Eigel is having a more full understanding of those costs when we're making really any regulatory change, whether that's development code, municipal code, or building code.
As part of the proposal.
Yeah, that's where.
In deliberation.
And while we don't want to have to do an environmental impact statement on everything either, so I think it works with the memos to just be a little more focused on the costs in connection with that.
Well, it's not just the cost, we're really talking about cost benefit analysis.
Yeah.
Because we need to balance, everything's gonna have a cost. And we're not gonna make a decision just on the cost, there's gonna be a benefit there. And what is that ratio between the cost and the benefit?
Well, but it's not always money. The benefit of having sprinkler systems in every new building, well,
Yeah,
fine, right, but
well,
there's
you
not
could,
a cost.
you can convert that to a cost picture. What is the cost of the building burns down and the impact on businesses, this life safety things? It is cost benefit analysis.
And you raise something that's already, the horse is out of the gate, but in the cost benefit of a sprinkler analysis, what is the cost in property damage without a fire? What's the incidence of,
Right.
So, I think there's a lot of the cost benefit analysis is what we need to do with good data on the cost.
I can see Steve chewing on it. And I think the mayor's question is gonna be critical, how detailed are you
Yeah,
going to want it to
are we,
be?
how much will this slow the process? And I
Exactly.
know we don't wanna move too fast ever on development. We wanna ask the right questions, make the right decisions, have the right information. I don't wanna paralyze the process.
Right.
I think from an implementation standpoint, I look at this and my direction to staff would be, with this as a goal, my direction to staff would be, we would want to tailor it to the level of impact that we're anticipating. And recognizing that we're not, and I don't think the town board would support us bringing economists on staff.
No.
And they're very expensive when you contract them out. There may be situations where you all send it back and say, it's okay for you to say, we don't have the cost information that we want for this change. So we're gonna try to benchmark it. We're gonna try to, give it an estimate of what detail the board might want. But you can, people spend entire careers on cost benefit analysis of 1 or 2 projects, and I'm not hearing that that's what the board wants. And I think this may be an iterative process where
You captured it pretty well.
Yeah.
in your-
you're telling us like this is not enough, or hey, wait, this is way too much for what we were anticipating. Some of us is just filling this out,
Included in the conversation.
and some grace from the board if we bring you something that doesn't quite have the level of detail that you're looking for, knowing that this is
We'll
going
let
to be
you know.
a developing process. Yeah.
Well, I
Okay.
think that the new development code is gonna be a great example. The development code can be a couple hundred pages long, the cost benefit analysis of the development code could be equally long. So that's gonna be a needle for Steve to thread.
And trustees, that is not in the scope of this current development code, so
Yes.
I will not have financial information for you. If that is to be a consideration for your approval and consideration of the development code, then that is information I would need to know very soon, because I would need to address that.
That's per Kirby's question.
Exactly.
I would suggest at this point, since it is not scoped, that we look at the draft stage. We look, and the board indicates if there's any changes that you all feel we need to do a more detailed cost benefit analysis around, because there's probably going to be 80% changes that not worried about, and if there are, we can talk about costs at that time. I'm also not sure that our current consultant is probably the best situated to do a true cost benefit analysis. So I would suggest for the overall development code update that if there are specific areas where the board wants that information, to highlight them at the draft stage. But otherwise, looking at moving forward, it'd be new building codes, new municipal code changes, development code amendments as they come forward.
And maybe there's not really a need for a ton of specificity that you get from a cost benefit analysis, but something like for sprinklers, for a typical building of this square footage, here's what the cost would be, or here's how much it would cost for a light fixture to be changed out, or a business sign to be changed out, and that gives you some idea of what the impacts could be without us having to, inventory exactly how many residences or businesses would be impacted by this change.
I'd like to see the door open just a little bit to be able to have that as part of the conversation when we make big decisions. So I'm good with what.
Anyway, this is the 2027 strategic plan, and the development code will be done by the time this kicks in. So,
I think it sends the right message to the public too, that we do consider the cost to the end user. If that's all we're doing, even right there, it's meaningful.
Trustees, if I could just add one last comment. Even if we do move this forward, like Deputy Administrator Van Weber said, we could provide simple information like the cost of a light fixture is $100 to $200. We are not equipped to do financial analysis. That is not what we are trained. That's not our experience. I would appreciate clear direction, what type of financial cost information you're looking for, because it's likely our office is not capable of providing that. So I just want to be honest with that. We're planners, we're building officials, we don't crunch numbers. So we would need clear direction if that's the way the board wants to go. We could do that, but we would need to build the capacity to do that.
I don't think we're looking at something that complicated.
I think what Jason said is the type of thing that I would look for. Just kind of an idea that it will be this sort of thing, but not put it together as a grand total of any sort. Because I think we cannot project the demographics of it, how often it will be, things like that.
Steve, do you think that language is reasonable to have a conversation about something new that comes before the board?
Trustee Igoe, that looks flexible enough.
Right.
I think we could work with that.
Thank you, guys.
And I'm going to stress the internal costs as well. I don't want us to develop something, adopt it and put on, and then have staff come in and say, oh, and by the way, we need 6 more people so we can implement what you adopted.
We can't manage what we implement.
Yeah, there are costs on both sides, and is it worth it to us to hire 6 more people to do this one thing, to make sure everybody has green widgets instead of blue widgets? Maybe in some cases it is, but we need to know what those costs are up front.
And I think it's code creep. I mean, you need to be aware of that. cost to the end user, the cost to the town, the time it takes the town, and so for myself, it's not necessarily the dollar amount, even though that's a key thing. It's, I can just attest to the years that I've been doing this and was in the construction industry, the creep that has happened in codes that some's valuable. You got a building blown over, you know, or structural issues, you address them. But some of the things that I've seen implemented over the years, it was implemented to implement. And so I just think we need to be aware of that type of stuff, not to just needlessly implement something.
I do think we should front load this conversation when we're doing projects, because there is some, like, the energy codes are a good example. Really, you have to do it. Is it worth the time to do a cost benefit analysis? Do the states work for them to put a fiscal note on it when you don't have a choice? But there are a lot of things where we do have choice, and then it makes sense to get a sense of how much detail the board wants, and at the end of the day, how much money we're willing to spend to get that detail. Because we can get Steve, Jason, management analyst Simpson, and I can put together an estimate for you, but the value of that estimate relative to the value of economist estimate or a building professional's estimate that we hire and spend money on is probably going to be different.
Do you think, with that in mind, do you think the language could be changed to develop a process to ensure that the cost of development code, municipal code, and building code changes are considered when changes are being proposed?
There you go.
Because
Yes.
understood,
I like
we
that
could be
better.
criticized. Well, you said you would understand it, and
Yeah.
you might not actually understand it.
And I see it as an iterative process where I'm fine with that thumbnail thing, and if everything looks good, move on. But if you guys say there's some red flags here, then we go to the next level and do a little more analysis. There's no reason to start with the full-blown thing to start out with when, you know, I trust what you guys come up with, and we'll be, you know, this looks like this isn't gonna have much of an impact.
Are there other items on that section of exceptional community services anyone wants to modify, highlight, add to? We're about half hour into our 2-hour session, and we're on the first one. I would also remind people, especially those with more gentle voices, speak to the audience, make sure everybody can hear you in the room. Travis, Mark, you're very clear. People can hear you in the back. You enunciate very well. Others are more soft-voiced. Even
Really?
Chris over there. Speak to the room.
These microphones do feed into the speaker system, so be
Right.
aware of where the
Gen-
microphone is. Yeah. No one's ever told me I'm too soft-spoken.
Same.
Travis,
Big same.
the last word in 6C should probably be changed to proposed, so you're not saying considered twice. That one you were just working on? Down.
6C.
The one that you were just typing, right there, when changes are being proposed.
So we did not get to the objectives quite yet. We are striking. We will complete Steve will complete the 6A1. That's the comp plan or the development code. Geez, that's been going on for many years, so it's going to be nice to finish that one. We do have 2 proposed additions: complete a historic structure assessment for purposes of developing a maintenance plan. We have a number of historic structures, and we want to make sure we know what the deferred maintenance might be the wrong word, since some of those are nearly 100 years old, more than 100 years old. And then 5A1 is implement selected recommendation from the 2045 Parks and Open Space Master Plan. Just a reminder that we have in the 2026 plan an objective to select one of those projects for budgeting. So that feeds into the budget process, which will feed into implementing that. If there's not enough budget for that, or if the board determines that you don't want to move forward, that would be a change that we would make at the final strategic plan level.
Travis, I was wondering, should that be a multi-year, because we don't know what the recommended selection would be yet, and it could be a larger project that could run more than 1 year. We just don't really know what that's gonna be yet.
Yeah, I think we will know by the time we have a final strategic plan. So if it's a multi-year project, that may get updated if we have a specific project that we want to implement. By the point we reach the budget, we will have a project by the time we reach a budget.
But the town staff makes those determinations as
Would
to
be
which of those items to move on.
Correct, we would make a budget proposal to you all for which of those items to, out of that fund.
So are we in the objective column?
Yeah.
So are there other objectives that folks want to add under any of these goals for 2027, specific objectives?
I have one specific to parks in our five. Would it be reasonable to set an expectation or allocation of maintenance versus new projects? To be mindful of that expenditure? Percentage split, prioritizing keeping things up, keep things nice, don't add new. And I don't know, short of a percentage, how to determine what that would be.
From a project standpoint, it's probably doable. I would say, well, David, the majority, probably the vast majority of our expenditures are maintenance oriented out of the general fund parks budget.
Correct, yeah, this is gonna be more of a capital
Might move
project.
that microphone closer to you and Tammy.
And this might be more of a capital type project. But I think one of the analysis we wanna do too, if you do build more capital, you gotta maintain it. What's the cost of that? Do we need additional people to maintain that capital project too? So that will be evaluated. It's just a lot of unknowns now because we don't know what project we're gonna select. But, you know,
Trustee Eigel, are you asking a more global question on the overall parks budget? What percentage should be?
Well, I think in general for the town, we should spend on maintaining what we have and keeping it nice versus adding new. And in these strategic plan conversations, we talk about not taking on too much, but focusing on what we can be successful with. And I think part of that is maintaining what we have and not adding shiny new things.
That should always be first.
We should be, but we refer to our strategic plan often when we support or move away from ideas that come up. So I think that establishing in writing that it's a priority for this community to take care of what we have is valuable. And so I wonder if, no, so I started and then you tell me what I was actually saying.
I don't know how that becomes I'm wondering how that becomes like a measurable outcome or objective.
Looking at the expenditures, I guess, retroactively, seeing if we met the goal, or I don't know.
I wonder if your thing could fit better into the town financial health or another area. I know it relates to maintenance and building property, but it's essentially a financial issue that you're looking at as in terms of how we really manage that. So maybe we can do something in the financial health.
You know, as we care for our assets, which are facilities, infrastructure,
Yeah.
parks, is such a dramatic part of this community that it seemed to fit here. So,
I'm wondering if it's the first tangible objective is evaluate ways to measure and manage the town fiscal allocation to maintenance versus expansion. And because I imagine it's going to be a pretty involved conversation. A great example is the police facility. A portion of that new facility, if we move forward, we could classify it as maintenance. The expansion of the facility, the square footage expansion, is truly an expansion. So there are areas where there's extensive capital investment, and whether that's classified as a maintenance cost or an expansion cost. The utilities are a great example. We do very little expansion, or almost no expansion, relative to the amount of money and time we put into maintenance. So I think we might want to have a broader conversation about how best to calculate that, whether it's by fund, and how we spread it out so that it's a repeatable process, so the board can get a regular estimate of how much are we spending on, how much of our capital spend and our O&M spend is on maintenance versus expansion. Because we do expand through O&M spend, especially in areas like the parks, where they'll take on small parks projects that do expand the parks infrastructure, but it may not end up in the capital budget. So I think Trustee Brown's suggestion is a good one, because it sounds like, Trustee Igo, your interest is global maintenance versus expansion expenditures. And we can wordsmith that when we get to the financial health section, if that's.
Sounds like a good plan.
Other items for this strategic section?
I just wonder, the one I raised about the seasonal housing issues, whether it bothers me not to have anything in the objectives over the 1 year period.
What would you put in there?
I don't know. I would ask, in light of what's going on with this group that we met with up at the Y, what is reasonable to come up with? Maybe developing a plan of some sort on addressing seasonal housing.
Well, you've got an evaluation going. When will that evaluation, that'll happen this year?
Oh yeah. The survey should close in the middle of May. We should be here before we know it, and then we'll bring that information to you. I don't know what we use the strategic plan to help us develop our budgets and things like that, and I really think this would be working with the housing authority to figure out a way to address
So
seasonal
when we
housing.
get that survey, that'll be a study session item likely. And that, I think, would tell you what direction steps we might consider.
Okay.
We can put a pin on the staff side. If there's something that comes out of that for the final strategic plan, we can make a recommendation for an objective for next year if there's work that's going to be happening.
And I really want to focus, we've got to get the business community involved in the way they have been. That's every bit as important as engaging the housing.
Anything else? All right. A time check, we do have an hour and 20 minutes left, and we still have most of our key outcome areas to go.
This often happens at the first one.
The first one
Well,
always
to be
takes-
fair, the outstanding community services is
Yeah, that's.
very critical.
They're not all
item, and
equal.
It deals with a lot
Some
of.
of
They're
them-
not prioritized though. Just.
Anyway.
All right. Governmental services and internal support. This is our high quality support for all municipal services. This helps get the job done throughout town. Only a few changes in the goals area. We did complete the review of the town employee benefit package, so we're removing that one from the goal list. We have implemented performance management both at the personnel level and at the performance measures level. So that's complete. And then we are proposing to modify 11E to broaden it. As you all know, we're planning to relocate the police department out of town hall. That will leave us in a unique situation for us, a situation we haven't had in quite a while, where we will have space, quite a bit of space actually. We would like to develop a long-term master plan for town hall that includes a space utilization study, life cycle replacement needs, roofs, window sidings, HVAC, and considers the possibility of reconstruction to allow for mixed use and or relocation of town offices. We add this goal in here because we know that for the foreseeable future, it's unlikely that there will be financial capacity to make a big relocation of town hall. We know this facility will need to be serviceable for quite some time. And we want to make sure when we're making investments in this facility that we're doing so in a smart manner and not sinking costs that we're not going to be able to recover in that 30-year period. Those are the only staff recommended changes.
And you can also see in objectives the specific items that the town has itemized.
Director Featherston, what do you think about an objective related to evaluating options for the replacement of Riverside restroom here? Oh, never mind. I
He
thought
thinks
we-
it's a great idea.
Good idea.
That's a fabulous
I thought we had it, and I didn't see it in red, so I missed it. Never mind.
So objectives, we do want to do a communications and engagement assessment to evaluate our public communication and engagement services, identify opportunities for improvement, including future investments that would support connecting with our community. This is a high request in the community survey. This is an area where you can never do too much to communicate and engage. We'd like to understand those gaps and to inform both the staff and the board of where we think investments can be made. Assess the effectiveness and sustainability of our website. We think that there are some alternatives out there, and if findings warrant, we would submit a 2028 budget request for a new website. We have saved a lot of money going with the state portal. There are significant drawbacks and benefits to that. We want to have a full assessment of that and bring you all a recommendation about what to do with that moving forward. Building extension of the street shop, extension of the fleet division facility to support services, plan for demolition and relocation of the Riverside restrooms, and remodel the visitor center restrooms.
The conversation that we've been having about making the community and developer conversations more timely, more iterative, more robust, which section would something like that fit in? And I know we're going to have a study session related to that here in 2026, and we may begin instituting actions even in 2026. So perhaps it does need to be an objective stated on here, but would that belong in this section?
Mayor, I would expect that by the time we reach 2027, those conversations will have already occurred.
We will have evolved.
Or if the board decides, no, we don't want to take this conversation on at the study session scheduled for that, it could be kicked into future years, into this 2027 objective. So you highlighted an important piece of the strategic plan, which is the board maintains the authority to say, hey, we're adding something to this, and we do that. So we are talking about that. That could have been a objective last year. It wasn't on the radar then, so it got added partway through the year.
So let's let that one happen organically. It's already on the schedule, and what steps that leads to will determine. So don't need it.
I just wanted to comment on 5B1. I don't think we need to make any changes in this, but I have thought for some time that we need to have more town-wide, town hall type meetings on major issues. So for instance, on the police station would be a good one. Certainly if we're going to do a new water treatment plant, where there can be more interaction between the public and staff and elected officials, so that it's question and answer, because when we have, we generally don't allow public comment at study sessions. We have limited public comment at town board meetings and no back and forth questions on that. And so really the only vehicle we currently have is the trustee talks. And I think for major items, we would be well served by having more of a town-wide sort of meeting with questions and answers to deal with. That has the possibility of creating more conflict, of course, but I think we're better off addressing it directly that way than letting it fester without being dealt with. So as we go through that, I don't think we need to change anything in here, but I'm going to be advocating for that as we go forward to figure out how to do that as part of the assessment.
Well, is that more in the middle column of the goal of consider a forum for community input on major projects?
Maybe.
Something like
Can I lend my support to that as well? I think that is an opportunity for us to do several things. The trustee talks are very effective.
They are.
People come with a concern, a question, and they leave satisfied. I think that a lot of times we engage in communication in a way that there's not a clear answer, there's not a clear direction, we're going to get back to you on that. There are no secrets and there's no hidden agendas that are going on with these projects that I'm aware of. And I think that it would really serve the staff, the elected, and the community to have a conversation in some format. And it's been years since anything like that has taken place. So I would jump on board with that very quickly, because I think you might have to limit it to 6 to 7 hours. That
Yeah.
type of conversation that was moderated, we have great resources here to conduct respectful meetings with restorative justice. And
Oh, that's true.
So all you'd have to do in 5C
I think
is
it should
write
be an
down
objective.
exactly what I said a few minutes ago.
Mayor, I'd suggest that all of that is included in 5B1. That I'll just make a note
Yeah.
to PIO Miller,
I kind of think it is.
and that we integrate it with that conversation, because that's gonna,
All right.
to do that
You got it.
correctly is gonna take a lot of resource.
Yeah, because that's still an evaluation, but this would be part of it, considering major project forms.
Well, and I want to point out, trustee talks are great, but they have two deficiencies in my mind. Number one is they're not well attended, like a town hall, great town hall meeting would be.
Mine are.
Ours, mine,
Maybe it's only when I'm there, I don't know. But, they're not all that well attended, yeah, you know, I would like to see this whole place fit for this sort of thing I'm talking about.
I will set expectations. We've had multiple
I know.
forums
It
like
may not
that,
happen.
and none of them have been well attended.
Yeah.
So I think having a diversity of strategies. Now, I will say if the entire board is there, they're likely to be more well attended.
Yeah, yeah.
Versus a general open house.
Well, and the other
And
thing,
scheduling, as you all know, getting on all of your schedules is a challenge. So I think having a specific tool in the toolkit that says this is for a big project or a controversial thing, this is an option. The investment is high and the return is high because it puts a lot of people in one place.
well, and the other thing about the trustee talks is you or Jason are there, but there's oftentimes questions coming up that you have to go deeper than just you or Jason to get the answers. So I think they're great. I'm not suggesting we abandon them by any means, but I just think there's more we can do.
I think an informative open house is definitely beneficial. I know with the wastewater system, we've had multiple of those. When you're looking at projects of that extent, you do all you can to answer because so many people see, why are our rates going up? Why is this? And if you can explain why that's going on and what's causing that,
I don't want to
it's
belabor.
good.
Yeah, oh,
Sorry.
sorry, Chris. I thought you were done. Go
No,
ahead.
that's fine.
I don't want to belabor it because I know we have other items to get, but maybe this is an internal objective for our board because our staff are holding these. The Water Master Plan held several, and I think if we're looking for an opportunity for those kinds of gatherings with board being involved, then maybe it's our commitment to be at those more collectively as a board versus asking staff to take on additional town hall structured forums where or we're reevaluating. I think I want to be careful that some of these things are taking place already, and it's just a matter of do we need to insert ourselves as a board to be there and listen into them and be more committed to that, or are we talking about adding a new layer or rebuilding one? Just to clarify, because I think some of those things that we're talking about, those are happening.
so I think that, you're probably right in some sense, but to have a meeting where it's not 6 tables that you separate groups to go to, or there's not an opportunity to converse with the board in a formal way or the staff in a formal way, I don't think those exist. The small group approach is interesting, but it doesn't force community members to be accountable for their words. And when someone says something quietly behind a keyboard, or they have something that they say in a small group, it's not effective long term. So I think when you stand up in a meeting and you declare what your position is and you can stand behind it, well, it gives the town the opportunity to respond and provide a good answer. And then it's over and we move forward. And we either, I think it's high investment, but potential for very high return.
Can I say something? I think we're getting into the whatever tools we all see in the toolbox. There's a lot of tools can be in that, and a lot of them we haven't been utilizing. We haven't done this in a long time, but this is not for the plan. But I would suggest maybe we reevaluate SDIC training and come back and look at what are the techniques. I mean, there are tons of techniques. We just keep throwing these out there, but there are so many out there that fit whatever the need is to bring in the potentially affected interest. They can be customized depending on what the project is. A town forum is one of those techniques, but you know the problem is if the only thing you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. There are so many other techniques, and I would like staff maybe to consider. We haven't talked about that for many years, and I think maybe some training for the town board to say, you know, there are a lot of possibilities that we haven't thought about of different types of forums and different ways to get public input and get informed consent of the public on projects.
So to be very clear, 5B1 is that. Like, we want to
It is, yeah.
understand what's out there. STIC is a tool. It has a lot of tools with it. There are lots of systems. I think we want to know what the gaps are and what the capacity gaps are, because at the end of the day, all of that takes time to set up, whether that's a consultant time or whether that's town time. Like, even the smallest thing, putting together a survey, which we all know how over-surveyed our community is, that takes a lot of time. So I think having this as a baseline, the communications and engagement assessment, allows us to see what are the gaps, what's needed to support all of these different systems or ideas, everything from the very large and involved ones to the very maybe less involved ones that all come together in a package.
Yeah, I just don't want us to get focused on, we're gonna have these town hall meetings, that's gonna solve everything. When there's all these other tools in the toolbox we could be using, we really need to educate ourselves on that and what tool fits the best thing. I mean, if we've got screws, we need screwdrivers, we don't need hammers and saws.
Sometimes power tools, sometimes hand tools.
Exactly.
Anything else on this item before we move to the next outcome? Right. Outstanding guest services. We're a preferred Colorado mountain destination, providing an exceptional guest experience. I'll go through goals and objectives. We can go. We're adding 2C, upgrade and maintain the quality, function, and safety of our visitor and event facilities. That fits within here. The other facilities go within governmental services and internal support. This is really a visitor-facing function versus town staff-facing functions. 5B, visitor services will work with Visit Estes Park. That's just a typo. It flows better with that edit. And then quite a few objectives. Update and develop emergency action plans for each of our event venues. Research project management systems for event planning. Improve our existing event orders that detail the logistics for an event. Asphalt the barn aisles and barns TU and V to improve the drainage and footing. Improve the events complex outdoor lighting throughout the property. Replace the sound system at Performance Park. Cyclical maintenance plan for the visitor center parking garage. Repair those visitor center structural logs, both inside and outside. Evaluate where print documents can be replaced with digital first resources. Promote car-free itineraries utilizing footpaths and shuttles to attractions and businesses. And develop messaging to ensure guests receive clear, proactive guidance to protect wildlife and improve community guest harmony.
Got a question on the 2C1, the asphalting. How does that fit in with building a new police facility? I don't want to be asphalting things that we tear up 6 months later because we're building something else. People hate those kind of things when we do that.
It's not for the barns that would be torn down, so it's the barns that
Okay.
are on the other side of the property.
All right, good. That was my only concern there.
Can the barns be moved, or do they have to be torn down?
Just move stuff.
Okay.
I'm surprised the wind hasn't taken it down themselves.
They could be moved.
Have that on there then.
They could be moved to a firewood pile.
I wonder what the wind load on those buildings was when they were built.
They had to withstand it, probably.
Definitely.
Is this all?
Yeah,
doable?
they're still there.
We talked about how you were going to reduce the number of items to make it more achievable, and this seems like there's an awful lot in here. If you think as a staff it's achievable, great, but I just raised that.
So we have different granularities depending on what section we're in. We do want to highlight things we're doing in this area. Some of these are on the border of operational where we might not have even included them in the plan because they're pieces of progress improvement. There are also things in here that may fall out because of budget realities. So some of the capital projects, but I would leave it to Rob to give you a assessment of feasibility.
No, I think these are all doable. We sat down with staff and went through every one.
From a facilities perspective, there's a few facilities projects in there. These are here because we are getting to the point where some of the issues are becoming critical.
You really need.
And if we don't do them, they'll just become more expensive.
I have a potential addition, either as a goal or objective, I'm not sure, depend on staff to let me know, and certainly needs board support. But we received, and the Business Park Board received an email from a local event planner asking us to evaluate our approach to hosting winter or non-summer season events. So I had said in the pre-work sent to Travis a suggestion of something like, in partnership with Visit Estes Park, explore options for attracting and retaining winter non-peak season events. And the intent, I think, is to evaluate what event center rates look like, and with that, Visit Estes Park dedicated marketing packages for our desired and destination aligned events. And I know we just had a long conversation as a board, as an outgoing board, about our events policy and approach. But this in particular, I think, goes into the nitty gritty of how are we welcoming non-peak season events from a facility standpoint as well, facility charge kind of standpoint, as well as a marketing standpoint. So the Business Park Board is aware of that as well, and likely going to talk about it within their operating plan discussion later this year. But I'm committed to bringing that to this table if this board would be interested in adding that as a goal or objective.
You all do have a study session scheduled to consider that and discuss that letter at a high level. Given the capacity we have this year, that might dovetail better into a 27 strategic objective. But that depends on the urgency the town board has for addressing the contents of that letter.
To me, it's a natural fit to look at it for 2027, just in terms of what we're talking about with budget. We're talking about different numbers that we need to be prepared with, what that impact may be on our budget considerations. So I think it's a 2027 position.
So just to be clear, if it's a 2027 objective, that means it would impact the 2028 budget. Because we wouldn't, if that exploring the opportunities was in the 27 budget, we would be doing the calculation.
Right.
So that we're in another, split year question. If you would rather talk about that this year, it is on your approved future study session list. The objective would probably be something more aligned with implement the results of that conversation.
Can we put a pin in that in the same we did for the other one like this, where we're going to talk about it a little bit this year and see where that lands? And I think it's
Especially with events that some of them have a pretty long lead time
right
to develop and market and get going.
We can put a pin in that. We can work up some language for that essentially puts a hold on it as we work through that conversation.
And if we adequately
That's
address
okay
it
forward.
in 2026, that's great, even better. Thanks.
That could also be one of the first items that we're talking to you about, the cost implications of.
Cost analysis.
Well, to that end, we have several things in this third column that replace the sound system at Performance Park. That's a very clear directive. What does that cost? And not necessarily asking you the answer, but are we deciding that today?
No, so the way the strategic plan works, if there's something in here that you say, we're not interested in that, let us know now, because then it doesn't go into the budget process. But the way the strategic plan works is this is informing our budget work. So if this moves forward, Rob would put together a decision package to replace that sound system, and that will compete with all of the other general fund priorities, and we'll either recommend it or not, and then ultimately the board will say, yeah, we think that recommendation is appropriate or not. So all of the items with financial impact are ultimately decided on through the budget process.
Right. I understand we have a couple more decision points coming up, but this is very specific.
Yeah, just because it's in here does not mean that it survives the budget. That's why we have the two-step, the provisional and the final strategic plan. We won't put anything in the final strategic plan that the board has not approved in the budget.
So my understanding of the process is that oftentimes we collectively as a town refer back to, well, board, in your strategic plan, you gave us direction to do this, and we are doing it. And then there's a different feeling about approving a budget item. And I want to be clear for either a constituent or other seat at this table that this is not approving or saying we're going to do this. We want to look into it. And we'll
Correct.
consider it again.
It's the board's first opportunity to say, no, don't spend time on that. But there's a fair chance that we won't recommend replacing that sound system. We'll have to tell the board, sorry, we don't have sufficient money to do this, or
So that would be different if we were saying propose or consider or review or present or this is a direction to do it. So that is different than what this document says.
correct. It's the difference between the provisional strategic plan and the final. The final is direction to staff, do this, and it's supported by the budget. This is saying, yeah, we're interested in pursuing this further, see where it runs out in the budget, and the final decision is made through the budget process and the final strategic plan adoption.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, we do this so that our budget is built off of not only the outcome areas, the strategic policy statements, and the goals, but is built off of things the board says, yeah, take a look at that. So it's really the first chance to cull potential recommendations. Yeah.
It's very similar to what we do in regional transportation. Develop a list of transportation needs throughout the region, what they are, and then you go back into a fiscally constrained plan that says, all right, these are all the things we think we need to do or have to do, but now these are the things we can afford to do, and then you cut back on the plan and do the fiscally constrained plan. But you have to have that bigger picture before you do the fiscally constrained to narrow it down when it comes to the budget. Yeah, so I expect some of these will fall off when we look at the budget and what we can afford to do.
They usually do.
Yeah. But at least it gives us a menu to look at, rather than nothing to look at all.
Other items on this one? All right, public safety, health, and environment. Estes Park is a safe place to live, work, and visit within our extraordinary natural environment. We have completed goal 2A. The state helped us complete that one by modifying codes and regulations to support alternative and distributed energy. We are, because of changes in how the county is approaching the waste shed plan, we have altered this goal to say remain an active partner with Larimer County in managing the Estes Valley solid waste. That's both landfill, trash, and recycling. We've added three new goals. Enhance the quality of environmental planning within the town's development processes. Consider implementation of climate action plan recommendations as appropriate. That will be completed this year. That is a 2026 town board strategic plan objective. And then 10A, continue to reevaluate current evacuation polygons based on the best available data and information about our community.
I don't see anything on here about even incremental or gradual electrification of our fleet and our tools. I know that we've done some of that, particularly tools. I know we've looked at hybrid vehicles in cases because we still run into cost factors. We have to live in the real world. And obviously dependability, ultra dependability when you're talking about police safety and all that stuff. But should we have a goal on there that, at least in the long term, opportunistically looking at electrification of our tools and our fleet? I thought I saw that somewhere.
There's in
I wrote it down.
transportation.
I thought it was on here last year. It's
Yeah, I
There's a
think it's further
transportation
down.
item
I think
related
it's
to
in
that.
transportation.
We
Yeah.
have it, and we could move it, cause I think it was in transportation originally pertaining to the trolleys, but it is,
It's number 7 in terms of a outcome statement.
it probably belongs in environment,
But that's not
I think.
changes.
But either way, as long as we at least have the goal so that we can consider action
we have
somewhere.
an actual goal somewhere.
Seeing,
Wasn't there, and we satisfied that one?
What's that, Paul?
There was one, I think, in 25 for the police cruiser, and looking at the hybrid, and I believe we satisfied that one.
yeah, I don't see it down here. Well, yeah, item 7 under the high-level strategic items, consider the potential impacts of technology changes, including electric and autonomous vehicles, etc. But we don't have it drilled down to a goal or even a specific objective.
somewhere. I'm trying to look.
I thought we did well, this is my third time through, so I think I would have noted it before. Anyway.
5C of utility infrastructure.
Yep.
Yep.
Transportation.
No utility.
Utilities.
Establish plan.
Yeah,
and
5C,
policy.
establish planning and policy guidance to direct town investment in zero emission fleet vehicles, equipment, and infrastructure.
Yeah, wait, does that belong more in environment? Ruben, you
the-
gotta get that taken care of.
You know, you have to look at it and say, why are we doing this? It seems to me that all the talk is around, we're doing this to try and decarbonize our society, and so it would definitely be in the environment.
Yeah.
I think because it's tied to the policy statement 5 that says responsible stewardship of our natural resources, including the use of renewable energy. I'm guessing.
Makes sense to
Yeah.
move.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to move that. I think originally that was part of our distributed energy resource conversation, and it's more sufficiently over the year to be more of a town fleet goal than a broader goal.
There's a lot of times these could fit in multiple.
Yeah, a lot of them could
categories.
fit into other places.
We used to do those mind maps, and then we have lines that went.
Right.
So,
And I know that like Parks and Ground and stuff, they've done that with a variety of tools and stuff. So we have made incremental progress, and that's what I'm really looking for is even incremental progress each year, taking another step. We're not going to suddenly convert our police fleet to electric or even full hybrid, at least step by step.
Sir, actually, since I've been here, we've not bought a single vehicle that's not hybrid for the police department. That day may come where we don't have an option to, but
Yeah.
with ISD's support and fleet support, we've actually bought nothing but hybrids for the last 3
Right.
purchasing cycles.
Yeah, and the hybrids, obviously that gets us up to the next step.
Yeah, we do consider everything we can for alternative fuels. The challenge with all electric up here, and just with the technology, is the batteries just do not last long enough
Right.
to be able to allow it up in this environment.
And obviously police is different than driving my car around town and everything. So we need to continue to weigh that with every purchase that we move toward. I would love it if I completed my tenure and we had one at least. Let's not put an objective at this point. Let's go ahead and just make sure that we highlight that as in the right section. And I'm not done. Recycling is the other thing. We know that our recycling people here in town have done a great job of kind of itemizing and of the things that could improve, different business cardboard or various other options up at the recycling center. We've worked a lot with the great Dwayne Penny down at Larimer County. He really does have that vision, and I know in the long run wheels are going to turn in that regard, but we haven't really incrementally seen much of any change in the 2 years I've been on board, again, in recycling, unless I'm missing something. I know they do their, like all the dangerous substances, paint and stuff, they have the big event that they do that, and they manage that whole thing, take care of it. But that's another thing where they've listed 6, 8, 10 potential actions the recycling group has that could occur to improve our recycling capabilities, and I don't think we've hit on one of them in my 2 years. But anyway, where's recycling on here? We've got it's in your environmental also.
That would be Mayor 2D, remain an active partner with Larimer County in managing Estes Valley solid waste.
And that's what we're doing. But the last conversations that you having too with Mr. Penny, and I don't think there's going to be a step up in 2026, but I do think with them moving to the new landfill and other things that are happening, there will be opportunity for greater progress in 2027 and beyond. I wouldn't put an action on here, but again, just calling attention to it, making sure it's on here in that goals page. And I have one more. MT 2030 is a group that arose out of CAST. Trustee or Mayor Pro Tem Hazelton is aware of it. Yeah, you used to. I attended it last year, and they asked if we wanted to consider membership with it. MT 2030, Mountain Town 2030, is really a moving toward the green. Is what it is, and it's a bunch of communities in the western states. It's not just Colorado. In fact, I think their convention this coming year is like Sun City, Idaho, or something like that. It's Sun City or Sin City? Anyway, they asked if we wanted to become a member. It's typically, for our size of town, it's $5,000 on an annual basis. They would actually let us in for $3,000 on a first year membership. I would like to, in 2027, have $3,000 if we can get in on MT 2030 and become official members of that and part of that organization. We're members of CML, we're members of CAST, we're members of many other things. I think this is an important little component. So I would actually put an objective saying, in 2027, fund membership to MT 2030. And we can talk about it in more detail at the board meetings.
Mayor, I'd be supportive of that. I attended 1 year as Marie's alternate for a CAST meeting, and then it was in Jackson Hole. I think it was 2024, and it's a big network of. I would be supportive of it. It's a great network of communities that are moving in the same direction that I think we are moving as a town, and also are hugely vested in how to advocate for our natural lands at both the state and federal level. So I think it's a great suggestion.
So where did we land on the recycling? I didn't see anything.
If it's included in solid waste,
Kind of.
we can add remain an active partner with Larimer County in managing the Estes Valley solid waste, including recycling. Without the town actively joining and developing recycling expertise and deciding we want to be in that service line, I'd be hesitant at this point to do anything other than partner with the county. I do believe that the county is going to ask for our cooperation relative to changes at the residential recycling center. But unless the board wants us to expand our service profile, staff right now we don't have solid waste expertise on staff.
And
we have it on the board. We don't have it on staff.
That's not what I'm looking for. But I think the Larimer partnership is beautiful and the right path to do it on, and we simply need to continue to work and dialogue with them and find those opportunities, hopefully in 2027, where we take one or two big steps forward.
But there are some things we can do that are independent that don't take expertise. Things like we keep hearing all the time, but why don't we have curbside recycling in Estes Park? There are ways that we can look at that don't take expertise, that through our licensing procedures and things that can be done. And I don't think we've ever sat down and had a serious conversation about curbside recycling, which definitely increases the amount that gets recycled and the participation rate.
So I have been talking to Director Penny about curbside recycling in the context of the extended producer responsibility program that the state's putting together. There is a solid chance, there's lots of moving parts there, that the extended producer responsibility funds that come into the state will provide new options for curbside recycling for communities like Estes Park. So it's on the table. The cost, whether it's a licensing aspect, I think that's going to come through as the extended producer responsibility rolls out. At least that's what the county is looking at right now. So that may be included within that goal 2D, or if the board would desire extra specificity, we could add that as an objective somewhere.
I would like to at least have some discussion about it, and not just wait and hang back to see what the county does and how we can go with them. We need to partner with them because they're in the waste disposal area. But there are things that we can do and move ahead and take some leadership. that don't take a lot of expertise.
Well, you have to have someone who wants to provide that business, correct?
Well, no, we can require it.
Required.
Yes, we could put it as part of the license. We did this in Larimer County years ago. That is part of it. You have to be, if you're gonna offer curbside trash pickup, you have to offer at the same time curbside. That's,
I'm missing something. You're saying the town.
if someone wants to pick up trash at residences in Larimer County, or within the town of Estes Park, we can say to have that and have a license to do that, you must also, at no additional charge as part of the base, offer curbside recycling. And Fort Collins did it 30 years ago.
Do we have any independent trash haulers?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Not everybody takes their trash to the transfer station. Oh my gosh, that'd drive them nuts.
Well, I mean, waste management. is
Right, we have waste
probably
management, we have,
98%.
right, and Atlas. And they can, as part of their base service, provide curbside recycling. In fact, they do. Atlas allows it as an option. Right now, you can sign up and get curbside recycling in Estes Park under their bag system. And I think as they move forward out of their bag system, you can still do it. But we do have the authority to do that under state law. Now, I don't know if people want to do that, but it's certainly something to consider, because I've heard for years people keep talking about, why don't we have curbside? Why don't we have curbside? And I don't think this board as a body has ever really addressed it seriously.
Do we want an objective of at some time in 2027, considering that? We wouldn't have to wait till 2027.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm throwing it out. Is, I mean, you said we talk about this all the time and we haven't done anything. This is something pretty simple. And maybe we'll have a discussion, nobody wants to do it, and the community doesn't want it, because, you know, the additional cost, but we haven't had the discussion.
Raise it in a board meeting for upcoming study session? Or do we stick it in an objective here for 2027 to raise it and talk about it in the study session?
My suggestion would be to integrate it into the 2027 strategic plan. If the board would like to discuss it as objective 2D1 up here, it's evaluate opportunities to
I like that.
curbside recycling. And I state that because I would really like more information from the county on what the ERP rollout, the EPR is so stuck in my brain. Sorry, Tammy. The EPR looks like, because there's a chance that there is funding for that would not impact residential or commercial.
It could
costs.
offset the cost, is coming up, yeah. But it's something we haven't had a discussion about, and I know the community has brought it up several times. And it may not be feasible up here. I know when we looked at it in the early 90s, and it wasn't really feasible in many areas. But Estes Park is kind of on that border of where curbside would be. And they've changed a lot in the last 20 or 30 years.
Good.
While we do this, not the same, but directly related, can we also maybe consider putting recycling bins downtown, or so for public recycling?
We have them.
We do have
Oh, we
recycling
do?
bins
Oh,
downtown.
and
Yeah,
where's that?
they are often integrated with the trash. There's the recycling side, the trash side.
I thought they were,
And
okay, thanks.
our waste management folks, it's not waste management.
We need bigger
Our
signs,
solid
apparently.
waste folks
Yeah.
do
Besides.
pick up recycling and trash.
Okay, great, thanks.
But we've also had just internal discussions about private events, mandating them to have recycling, because currently we don't require private events to have recycling. And that's something that may come to the board at some point.
Especially if they're on town property, that would be great.
Travis, I have a question about, if you scroll down to the next page, number 9. 9 is without anything that really fleshes that out, at least this year. And I wonder, you know, we train and
Which one is that?
Number
Sorry.
nine.
scroll down.
Community emergencies number 9.
Yeah, couple of questions on that. The thing that caught my eye was 10A in the center column about evaluating polygons and having occasionally the responsibility to be aware of the polygons and coordinate with evacuations or ask for assistance with that. That to me strikes me as a fire district, perhaps a fire district responsibility, in that it falls under wildfire planning and mitigation and response. So I wonder if that's something that the town is taking on or over. I think that started with former Fire Chief Wolf establishing those polygons in a process. So I wonder how that has evolved and what the participation of the fire district is, or if that is off their plate.
I thought it was the fire district that created
I
those.
thought it was, but
It's a partnership.
oh, I
for sure.
totally get it, yeah.
So, for example, is when the new development started going and planning up Fish Hatchery Road. That was former Chief Capital and I working together to choose that line and we just split that out. The reality is that's on the polygon development because when we actually go to evacuations, what you'll see with even national curriculum and actually the International Association of Fire Chiefs, in addition to what comes out of the National Wildland Fire Group, NWCG S215 class, Fire Operations, the Wildland Urban Interface, it's actually law enforcement's function in that to be doing those polygons based on triggers set by fire. So based on all that cooperation has to go together and the fact that we wear the emergency manager hat for the town of Estes Park, that's where that fits in with all that. But I can say all of the polygons that we do up here is really a partnership with the fire chief and I.
Yep, and I understand that and appreciate that. It seems to be usually a fire decision and a law enforcement execution, and it's all together. But
It's
it goes
actually
very quickly and
most of the time it is a law enforcement decision based on
to evacuate.
Yeah, based on the cooperation with the fire department to set those triggers, and again, that generally comes out of those curriculums I was telling you about, like S215. I actually just spent all weekend getting the S215 certification, and it comes out of there.
So it's fresh.
Yeah, it's super fresh.
Yeah.
4 days old fresh, but it's also out of the IAFC curriculum for emergency evacuations.
So that's good to articulate that because I think that'll, as the fire district works out their budget and their plan, to know whose responsibility is.
And I would reiterate though, like, that's the cool thing about Estes Park is how strong that partnership is between the sheriff's office through the fire ward of the county, the Estes Fire Protection District, the emergency management arm of the town of Park, and the police department. Like, our cooperation level is so seamless.
Right.
And you just have to have that.
Well, it seems that way, and that leads right into my next, which I raised first, which I'm coming back to number 9. I wonder if we can add an objective to train and fully prepare immediately. There used to be a public safety committee within the town, and that was a town thing. That went away. It seems possibly from on the fringe of outside that there is not an ongoing conversation about working together with agencies on a regular basis. We don't have that in our objective as a town. Is that a reasonable thing to say that the town will participate in that ongoing conversation, a public safety committee or whatever you would call it? Is there a meeting that occurs on a regular basis that is fire, ambulance, sheriff, police, town?
I wouldn't say on a regular basis that hits every last little aspect. A good example was last day Friday, Chief Langhammer and I, Chief Jones, were down at the All Hazardous Fire Summit. You know, those things are constantly occurring. That same group, including Sheriff's Office and EMS, on the 18th, we're having an internal, actually of all things, evacuation tabletop. Does it occur on the third Thursday of every month? No, but those do commonly occur, and right, wrong, or other, they do tend to be seasonal. Like right now, we're all concerned about the drought and fire season coming upon us. But I'm sure they're not like on a routine basis that. But conversely, the first Thursday of every month, every fire chief and every police chief in North Colorado, including myself.
So I would like to suggest that we, even on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, that locally the agencies that are tasked with that cooperation don't come together in an emergency or a happen chance course. But I think that it would be reasonable to bring that back, to have that communication, if you think it's reasonable. So I'm asking, but I don't see anything to support that first goal. And there's my question.
That seems like an operational thing more than a strategic planning thing.
That's a commitment as a town government to cooperation with other agencies, I think.
Yeah, but
We see it in other areas.
and I don't know, maybe it's something in very general, not just about law enforcement. We would have some statement about we're committed to work on a regional basis on everything. I mean, it's not just a law enforcement issue, but our streets people work together and with the state highway department and the county streets folks. I mean, there's a lot of intergovernmental cooperation. Maybe something about we value intergovernmental cooperation.
You know, it probably doesn't need to be at the strategic plan level, but operational, I think it's an opportunity.
No, it
for
should
us
be
to-
there.
Yeah.
But
Since
So-
we're talking about it though, sir, this is a fantastic plug. Thursday the 7th, next Thursday, coffee tea at the PD. Fire department and I are putting on, topic is emergency evacuations in the town. So while I'm on the air,
I'll tell my.
I did have a comment on that one though, and this is just more for writing. Polygon is very jargonistic. I mean, really, I think it probably came out of LEDA and it's a GIS term to talk about how some of that's done. If we're going to have something that we present to the public as something, I was called the third guy in line at 7-Eleven. If we went in then and said, you know, hey, we're working on our evacuation polygons, we'd get this blank look on their face. So if we could make it a little more plain English than evacuation polygons, that would be.
you could just say procedures.
Yeah, or plans, something, but polygon is pretty jargonistic.
I kind of think that polygons help the public understand how the evacuation works, because the way the polygons are set up determines who evacuates first, depending on where the fire is. So in some sense, if the population is educated about how the polygons are the procedure, or contribute to how the procedure is executed, they might be more receptive to how the actual evacuation happens.
You could say neighborhoods too,
That's
because
true.
polygons
Yeah.
is
One of the components.
Again, I think the second man in line at 7-Eleven has no idea what a polygon is.
One of the big components too is how quickly you move to mandatory. The lessons learned from East Troublesome Creek, probably in certain circumstances, you move much more quickly to mandatory, where you would have otherwise used optional
Right.
evacuation techniques. And I know that's part of the fire district thinking too. But every disaster is different. You don't know which way the wind's blowing. You have to deal with it at the time with experts in incident management.
This might be a good time to mention that I had spoken with Travis about this a couple of weeks ago, and then I'm not sure if it should be moved into the strategic plan, but I have been approached by a couple of community members, and I think this fits in a little bit to what Trustee Eigel was saying. But they're curious if we could host or consider hosting like an annual or every 2 years like emergency symposium at the event center, some larger area. And this goes back to the town hall piece we were talking about earlier, but this was specific to emergency preparedness and include our local and regional response partners so that there can be kind of an informative, maybe not getting down to the nitty gritty of this is the exact polygon you're in, but to talk about how our regional partners are always working together to approach what might happen in terms of evacuation, whether that's for fire or there are a number of other natural disasters and unnatural disasters that may come before
It
us.
should be regular, iterative. It's just like the bear articles that get printed every year.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly, and I think
Same thing.
And I think that was exactly where the request came from the community, is just to make sure as people move in and out of the community or as things change. And so I think, you know, it may be something that is in place before we hit the 27 plan, but I think that it's something that's been talked about is, you know, it's been 4 years. Is that right? No. 6 years since, right? Yep, 6 years. That's weird. Since the fire, and just talking about all those different components and how they work together. So, and I think a lot of that comes to an educational piece. That I mean, we've had people move here who weren't here during the fire. I just had a conversation with my volunteer soccer coach last night who didn't live here, and was like, I actually have no idea what I would do, how that would work. And some of that is the onus is on the property owner, but I think some of it is a good educational opportunity for us. So.
Another good plug. A week from Saturday after the duck race is our safety fair.
Yep.
And we have everybody. We invite everybody: emergency management, fire law, EMS, state, local, national. We'd be we'd love to talk about that stuff.
You know, I wonder if that would be a good time to, like, you go to a lot of things where there's the
Breakout session.
yeah, breakout sessions where you have vendors and then you have classes, and that'd be a great opportunity to do an educational piece of it where there were giveaways. It all seems operational. I want to not lose the focus that my request was to work at a technical level between agencies and have an opportunity to say things are going good or bad when it's a low stress situation. There is a gap that I'm personally aware of, and so I will work with you on that.
Thank you. And I'll look into, I don't know if we can get it done in 10 days, but I'll look at that breakout. I might be able to.
You might,
yeah, I'll work on a breakout
I
session
think people,
through the lens of like evacuation.
people are interested. People want to know and they want to have the information. It's a good opportunity.
I think half the message is it's all happening in the background, and I think that assurance for the community is really helpful.
Yeah.
I think sometimes there's a perception that just because we're not talking about it or there's not, a formalized situation that it's not happening, but it is. I also just wanted to mention I had to leave early from the last session when the restorative practices conversation came up. So Manager Shields from RJ and Board Chair Westover, I think, and staff, they had provided a substitute statement. It's under 8. And so I just wanted to say thanks for those comments. That went right to RJ, and they had that conversation. And this replacement policy statement is here if anyone has questions or wants to discuss it. But I just wanted to note that they hopped right on that. So thanks for the question from the board.
And let's not forget, we tend to do the disasters are the most recent ones we tend to concentrate on. But there still is a huge risk of flood in this community. And we can't forget that we're spending, and because it was a long time ago, and there's even fewer people who were here during the 13 flood. But it's a different type of response, it's a different kind of planning, and people need to be prepared for that as well. And both of them are both fires and floods, it's not an if, it's when it's gonna happen again. We need to make sure both of those are considered in this.
We're due for a healthy blizzard too.
That's true.
Overcorrection.
So really quick while we were talking, just before we move on, I modified 10A to remove polygons, continue to reevaluate current evacuation areas / procedures based on best available data, and then 10A1, establish regularly recurring emergency preparedness and evacuation education opportunities for the public. That may be a standalone thing, and maybe a portion of the safety fair that we do on a regular basis. And then 10D1, I'm not sure if we settled on that, but in general, evaluate opportunities to expand curbside recycling.
I have a question about 2H1. I remember that there was some discussion some time ago, I don't know if it was the last board or the board before, about hiring a dedicated environmental person for the community, and it was decided at that time, I think, not to do it, and I'm wondering if there's been a change of perspective from staff, or what's going on there, because that was an issue in your election.
Yeah, totally different.
Totally
functions.
different?
Yeah, so in one of the recommendations from the Environmental Sustainability Task Force was to add a person, a sustainability person. This is a function that not necessarily an extra person, unlikely actually an extra person, more focused on evaluating and figuring out how to make sure that we are following our guidelines on the regulations that we currently have and potential new things within the development code. Steve can talk to it a little bit, but right now we have a fairly large set of things that we have to review, and making sure that we have the environmental planning functionality to actually review those things effectively, I believe, is where this objective is coming from.
And through there, we also have that we're writing the climate action plan. It is in the process.
Correct. That is somewhat, so there's the distinction I'd like to make is there's the climate action plan, the environmental sustainability piece. This is constrained to the planning function within the community development department. the evaluation of development plans. Steve, you'll take it from here.
Trustees, what we were seeing is through the development process, a lot of the questions arising from the community was wildlife related, to put that one as an example. And a lot of questions arise from that. How do we address those issues? What's the best way? There's a lot of expertise out there, but where is that? How do we tap into that? So the thought was to try to evaluate what are the questions, where's our gaps, and how can we fix that? And especially given the importance of a lot of those questions from the community.
I'm not sure I fully understand how this is different than what was. But this is basically an issue of regulatory compliance within developments, then, basically.
If Trustee Brown, if this function is housed in community development, then yes, that probably would be our focus.
That would be the focus.
Right, when a development application comes in, it would be more of a regulatory.
So it's not new environmental planning, it's just it's within the context of development.
I could see this starting eventually. I'll see it starting specifically looking at development review. I think given the importance of these issues to the community, I think it could grow into whatever we wanted to see it grow into. So,
But at this point, it's evaluating how we might do that function, whether it's hiring somebody or something.
It is very different than the general sustainability manager that was floated a few years ago that would do all things sustainability for the town. This is really, we're talking about the environmental planning function. So not looking to facilitate like
Yeah, it's
fleet
the
electrification. It's not one person that's overseeing all of the town's sustainability initiatives. That was the proposal 2 or 3 years ago.
So this is only related as it relates to development processes.
The way it's worded right now, you have a dedicated environmental planning function within the community development department for ensuring new and existing development complies with the sustainability.
So if it's something like road expansion that wouldn't go through you guys at all, this doesn't apply. Like a road project. That's what, I'm just clarifying. Because there are a lot of things that all this would come under if we were doing a major road reconstruction. I mean, the loop's done, but the loop's a good example. It never saw the light of day upstairs in planning because it's not a planning function. But it's still, all those things would apply to a project, community values and environmental impacts.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's gap assessment. It's do we have the skills that we need
Yeah, no, that
or
makes
the
sense.
resources we need to actually apply these standards that
Yep.
we're hearing about from the community frequently. And then the board will have to decide which of that you're actually interested in resourcing and in what manner.
I understand wildlife, wildfire, and flood. Community objectives seems a little nebulous. I can't see. Well, Steve, are you
Probably
checking how we're
remove
doing
that
on
to simplify.
community objectives?
Probably, this goes back to the comp plan. So we're
Okay.
looking at what does the implementation of the comp plan look like? I'm not sure that that's a critical part of this objective. Steve?
No, you're right. I mean, the comp plan is kind of visionary, kind of what I was looking at with that statement, but because that is something we also use as our guidance is that comp plan. So what are those community objectives?
As articulated in the comp.
Right, yes, sir.
Maybe we should put comp plan in there. It just seems pretty, like I said, kind of nebulous. Yeah. You okay with that, Steve?
No, I think that's a better approach.
What you're comfortable with?
Anything else? I do want to recognize we got 15 minutes left and probably at least one of our transportation is a high consequence area. There's likely to be a fair amount of discussion. I'd suggest that we go through the robust economy and utility infrastructure and then jump back to transportation, because that's likely to take the balance of our time. Robust economy, you'll notice we don't have any objectives this year. We have quite a few objectives for the 2026 plan. We have 2B that turned into a goal in the 26, or objective in the 26 plan, and we just neglected to remove the goal. Enhancing engagement with the business community through scheduling and timing, that is an explicit 2026 objective. And then adding continued collaborative planning efforts with Whimsadoodle and the Estes Park Housing Authority regarding a shared facility concept on Cleve Street that includes new parking structure, retail space, and housing units.
We have all the RP and settling in this year, so it's probably a good year not to have a whole bunch of changes.
I do have one thing that I'd like to raise, and that is, with the state taking over the Stanley, and obviously we don't know how that's gonna look like 5 years from now, but they have extra land, for instance, that they could put stuff on. With the film center, there's gonna be a renewed focus, both the film center and Sundance, a renewed focus on film issues, and I know that the EDC has had discussions, and there was, I understand, some time ago, an effort to bring a community college campus here. Didn't work out so well, but possibly there could be some educational type institutes or something along those lines in collaboration with the state that we should be looking at. And I'm gonna raise this with the EDWC, and I think I already have in some sense, but it seems like the whole environment has changed so much from that prior effort with the community college, and the focus of this would be very different, that we should figure out a way to have some ongoing discussions with the state about the development of that and how that affects our community, particularly with respect to potential educational opportunities that might arise there. I'd really like to see us have some sort of educational presence here, mainly because we often have a lot of offshoots, business offshoots from that as well, that could increase and make the economy more robust. So I'm not sure if there's an appropriate place to put that in here, and it's more of a long-term thing and not a short-term thing by any means. It would be an objective, it might be a goal to commence discussions about such a thing.
And I'm gonna throw it out one more time, people tend to forget this, we do have a college campus up here, it's just totally underutilized.
Yeah.
University of Northern Colorado has a campus here in Estes Park. And they have not been too interested in expanding and doing other things, but I think that still has potential.
I have a question on 5B. Committing to Whimsadoodle there for that project or collaborative effort, tying the three entities together, I think we're gonna have to look a little bit at the potential for success of each of those components together, but I think we need to look at them separately and not as a package that we're putting together in our strategic plan. Say, for instance, we get to a point where Whimsadoodle is not the best partner, or it doesn't work to put apartments with the parking garage. Is this committing us to that process, that project in our strategic plan? Can we remove names and say continue planning, continue, whatever that would be? We want to look at the project. It's on the table, but does our strategic plan really limit us to one entity?
We haven't made a resolution or something even harder binding.
I understand that. But our strategic plan is referred to often in deliberations that we have and presentations that come up. I'm just asking to take out the specifics and keep the conversation going.
So I think the reason that the specifics are in there is because they're the owner of the property that's under consideration. So we could remove Whimsadoodle and the Housing Authority and just say continued collaborative planning efforts regarding a shared facility concept on Cleve Street.
That would go better with the first column, and it would not bring any, wouldn't tarnish that effort at all.
Yeah, sure.
progress. I wonder if that is more appropriate as an objective than a goal now that I'm thinking about it, because we're currently waiting to hear back from Whimsadoodle on some information that we provided regarding potential financing, and so I think the project would be multi-year, but I
When I
think
first
this
saw
year
it,
and next
yeah.
year will be the years where we're actually figuring things out. So I think maybe
It's the actual tactical steps, so yeah, it probably belongs in there.
What goal would you connect it to, Jason?
Oh yeah, good point.
So, it's
Travis,
still
I wouldn't
5.
limit that to community college. It just seems unlikely to me that's going to be that direction.
Okay,
1A.
we've got two conversations. I was trying to capture Trustee Brown's first point. Let's resolve 5B and then jump back to
Okay.
that.
That's fine.
Can you tie it to
You
the
can have
downtown plan?
5B, but it kind of is reflected in the objective column too.
Maybe continue implementation of the downtown plan.
Good idea.
Isn't the parking structure part of that? If we're connecting it to a goal.
Yes.
Well,
Yes, sir.
I'd have to look at the downtown plan to see if that fits, and I can't remember the specifics on Cleve Street beyond the street profile itself.
Yeah.
We'll workshop that.
I'm grasping a little bit there because there isn't a
I
specific.
did put you on the spot.
goal.
So keeping a broader focus
Yeah.
in that regard, and then all of this actually may blend down into transportation relative to the parking garage concept, and that may be where we end up putting it. Back to Trustee Brown's first item, want to see if the board is interested in that. And Trustee Brown, you mentioned just higher education.
Yeah, I'd say a higher education, that's a good, because that could be a separate institute, campus of the college.
We'll say enhanced since we know we have UNC up here.
Okay. Since it's going so well with UNC.
I still have hope. We'll convince them to do more with that property.
We should attract a bunch of tech industry because of our great broadband too.
There you go.
Other items on robust economy. All right, financial health. We only have one new. We'd like to develop and share quarterly financial reports with the town board that clearly compare revenues and expenditures against the adopted 2027 annual operating budget, supporting informed and effective financial oversight. Now that we have a modern ERP system, that is much easier. And then we did have this updated suggestion for the strategic policy statement. We were workshopping that after the first session. We responsibly steward public funds and carefully manage town expenditures to support cost-effective services for our residents, customers, and visitors. Transportation, well,
We're
gonna-
hold that till last.
we're gonna run over anyway, so why don't we go through transportation, and then utility infrastructure. So starting with the changes, we have assessed impact fees and ultimately decided that is not a thing to pursue. Not only does it raise the cost of development, but because we're not growing rapidly, the context that we have really makes impact fees less usable as a reliable funding source. So we're proposing to remove that section. And then we added an extra word under 8B that's probably unnecessary. Pedestrian facility network. I think pedestrian network is more straightforward. We do have a fair number of objectives. Some of these are carryover objectives that we know they're those 2-year objectives. Some of them are not. Complete the reconstruction of First Street with added curb and gutter and ADA compliant pedestrian facilities. Finish the construction of the visitor center parking and transit improvements if fully funded. Design the multi-use trail, that's a multi-year objective. Implement the CMAQ funded pilot programs, that's that continuing objective. This may be where we combine the earlier conversation about the Cleve Street project. Consider options, identify funding, and construct a 3-level parking structure at the Bighorn parking lot. 5A2 is evaluate the pros and cons of dynamic pricing for paid parking, expansion of paid parking downtown, and the extension of the paid parking season. That is effectively phase 3 of the downtown parking management plan. 5A3, evaluate the effectiveness of current transit service routes, times, and season, and consider expansion if warranted. Construct a concrete trail along the north side of Wonderview Avenue from the Safeway driveway to the roundabout at McGregor Avenue. And then the carryover to your objective, construct the final segment of the Fall River Trail.
And I like the fact that we've got at least 3 items on here where we continue to build that trail system. I do think that that's just an important part of eventually getting the town to be well trailed such that the micro devices, micro mobility, Devil's Gulch and Dry Gulch instead of taking your life in your hands. I mean, eventually that'll be a trail like Fish Creek and Highway 7, right? Someday.
You won't need them with your flying cars.
But the internal transportation, I still know that, some decades down the line, things are gonna look an awful lot different, but the trails are part of it.
Town Administrator Mahalik, I might suggest striking the other one that we were just talking about with the addition of consider options. I think that probably covers the parking structure piece since we've eliminated some specifics of who we might partner with there.
Maybe strike this one.
Yeah, I think that probably makes it's redundant. I think if we're including consider options below.
It opens a conversation to
Doesn't the new one fit better where we're at right now?
specific unit.
It's up to you all. I think they're really close.
They are.
Strong feelings on that one.
5A1 seems to be better.
And maybe in 5A1 you could add, explore partnership opportunities or
Agreed.
something.
I think that element of it is valuable.
Shared facility concept.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't think we want to lose sight of that. Doesn't mean we're committing to it. It just means it's on the table.
But we lose that if we don't add it.
Correct.
So we would replace that 5B up above with explore partnership opportunities, consider options, identify funding, and construct a 3-level parking structure at the Big One parking lot.
Seems easy.
We'll figure it out.
Other items in transportation. Sorry, we did add this and I didn't highlight it. Monitor and address the impacts to the town sidewalk and trail system. We modified that, I think, from electrified micro-mobility devices. You do have a 2026 objective to review the municipal code elements. Operationally, Chief Stewart and Commander Palucha have been working on increased enforcement. We have done some light and soft, up to this point, press on appropriate use of micro-mobility devices and are in the process of preparing a kind of summer kickoff, not only for kids leaving school who are often downtown, but for our visitors that are joining the community, both on a short-term and a summer-long basis, appropriate and proper use of micro-mobility devices, especially in downtown Estes Park. This is about the time of year we see folks start coming to the community and acquiring those devices and using those devices, and in some cases inappropriately on our sidewalks. Items on transportation. Utility infrastructure. We may be back with you next year or for the final strategic plan to talk about whether 1 and 2 here duplicate our, an extent, duplicate our outcome area. We have a reliable, efficient, up-to-date utility infrastructure serving our community and customers. We have added some increased details to 1A here, designing water treatment operations that increase reliability and lower O&M costs by leveraging modern technologies, improving chemical handling and staff safety, and mitigating natural disaster single point of failure vulnerabilities. We believe that 1C, increase the resiliency of the water distribution system, can be rolled into strategic policy statement 3 here and 3A. So we'll discuss that in a second. Additional goal in 2A to identify and remove high-risk, high-frequency outage areas through the targeted replacement of bare overhead conductors and the deployment of intelligent fault isolation technology. That's power outage areas. And then we are suggesting a strategic policy statement change. We did talk about this the last board meeting on strategic planning. We support an appropriate level of redundancy in all town utility services. Redundancy is one strategy, so we want to broaden this to say, or we want to suggest broadening this rather. We use a risk-based approach for achieving an appropriate level of resiliency in the provision of all town utility services. So redundancy is a strategy in achieving resiliency. It's not the only strategy.
That's better. Yeah.
And so that comes coupled with the replacement goal for 1C is 3A. Evaluate the reliability risks faced by each of our three utilities, broadband, power, and water, and address those appropriately. It also includes the cost consideration. It's back to that cost benefit calculation. You can build redundancy or resiliency to the utmost. You can spend all the money you have on that. There's an appropriate level of that that ultimately the board has to determine with recommendations from staff. Reduce water waste is an added goal. We're going to move 5C to the environmental section. And then we have 4 objectives. Complete the Woodstock Drive Neighborhood Stormwater CIP project from the list included in the Stormwater Master Plan. Complete the construction of the Trailblazer broadband system for customers in our electric service area. That's an ongoing multi-year objective. Complete the Carriage Hills Spruce Knob main replacements to reduce those high frequency leaks and stabilize distribution pressures on our south side. And then complete the Esri utility network migration for fiber GIS that improves network visibility with our owners of PRPA. Wow. PRPA and PRPA. Yeah.
Just say all
Strangely worded.
5 organizations. It's all 5 of the entities. It's that regional collaboration to lower the cost of utilities.
When in 3A, when you refer to the Woodstock Drive project, I hear that's necessary. Looking at that, it looks like it's a very nice project. Is it the gold project or is it the Ford Escort of getting the job done? I mean, are we going to pair this? This articulates those specs for this project. Will we see that again, or is that a utilities public works decision as far as that project goes?
It's a public works decision. The drainage ditches are really eroding.
Right.
The culverts under the driveways.
Yep.
It's been an ongoing issue. And so along with that, we're going to put curb, gutter, as well as a sidewalk. We're going to enclose the drainage ditch. So it'll be an enclosed drainage of that.
So it'll be very nice.
It'll be very nice, yes. I don't know if it's Ford Escort or Cadillac, but it's, it's needed, I guess.
So looking at stormwater projects, the question on my mind philosophically higher level is, do we invest hundreds of millions in over 20 or 30 years for this plan? Or do we address things as we go, as we're able to address issues that come up? What's the responsible approach to that? So if we start with gold plated, when we could get through with even a nice Land Cruiser, something that will get the job done. I don't want to commit to the highest level that we can do, something that will serve the community.
A lot of our approach to these projects is to reduce the maintenance needs of those items. When you close that structure and you reduce that erosion that's occurring, then it's less maintenance and it's a longer term solution that you don't have to go back to and fix again. So we're looking at long term lower maintenance and cost by making these improvements now. We could go forever with some of these improvements, but we're going to hit the spots that have the highest impact and have the highest desire from the community to be fixed as well, but also lower our maintenance. So it's kind of a combination of those approaches.
So you're suggesting the Toyota?
No, this is a very nice plan. So I'll visit with more, outside of this. This may be a good test.
And really our goal is to maintain what we have and keep it working efficiently and not letting it degrade. That's mainly my main goal for these programs.
Kind of that old oil filter commercial, pay me now or pay me later.
Right, yeah. The same with our pavement management, things like that. Same with facilities too. You want to maintain what you have and keep it running.
Could I make a suggestion on 1A? You know, that's a 5-year goal that I'd like to see at least a siting of the treatment plant and some planning. I don't see any reason why that needs to be 5 years out. I feel like that should be pushed up to 2027, 26 objective to start looking at that. Every year that goes by, the more expensive these things get.
Actually, probably recommend that it become more of a 1-year objective for 2027 to start that. I mean, I don't want to get the cart before the horse, but the reality is we're going to ask you to approve the master plan, and we're going to ask you to approve rates. And if all of those things get approved, well, then we would hope that by 2027 we kick that process off.
I know the master plan's coming soon, and so I think we should push it to 27.
1A1 could begin process to site new water treatment plant.
Determine site location, begin the planning.
Yeah, and we'd probably make it even more encompassing of, beginning the whole process.
Probably make it one, sorry, Rudy.
Well, Jackie actually came up with words, but I can't find it.
More than just citing the whole, we're beginning the process.
It's beginning the process. And again, it's the cart before the horse, assuming that you approve the master plan, approve the rates.
How about site
If you don't, it
design?
won't make it to the final strategic plan.
Right.
You'd call it preliminary design or building
Not
the
construct.
building the
I think
schedule.
construct is going too far.
Oh, yeah.
Design.
I think we're beginning the process of site and construct the plan.
Yep.
It'll take
We
years to
could
get
say
that.
site, design, and construct the plan.
There you go.
There's a little bit of art in this. You'll notice that our police facility, the public safety facility, has been a multi-year objective to build it for the last 3 years. So there's a little bit of wiggle room here. It's more of a declarative statement from the board that, yeah, this is important and we're going to do this and we want to begin that process next year at the latest.
And again, it goes back to the process of it'll go through the budget process. If there's no funds because there's no rate increases, then stuff has to get cut. So it's a great place to put in 2027 to start the whole process.
Again, hopefully soon.
Other questions, items there? Only 8 minutes over. Next steps, I will send out a clean copy of this to you all. I won't copy Dan, so the whole public will just be able to see it there. And then this will come to you as the provisional strategic plan for consideration at your May 26th meeting. Can always be changed then, and subsequently, well, can always be changed. But that will be what we use to generate the 2027 budget.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Good job, all.
Managed that staff.
Yeah, staff did a great job. Thank you.
We figured you got a pretty good gathering earlier in your schedule.